What are the three key fantasy football questions facing the 2022 Tampa Bay Buccaneers as they go into training camp? Time to preview them and break it down right here and right now as we begin another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Our Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for SportingNews.com. Things are slow here in the NFL as we wait for training camps to open, but that's not going to stop us from chugging along with our series here on Locked On Fantasy Football. We're doing three key questions for fantasy for all 32 teams. We're up to our final team in the NFC South. That means we're down with 12. So if you missed the previous 11 NFC teams we talked about, check them out. We will turn to the NFC West next, and they get through the entire AFC. So we'll hit all 32 teams. So after today, we'll be 12 down here for you on the show. So looking forward to diving into another division there next here in Locked On Fantasy Football with 20 left to go. So we will dive into the Buccaneers. They do have some key questions here, of course, around Tom Brady for this offense in 2022. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We are free and available for you on all platforms, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's get into the Buccaneers. They've had some changes here. So we'll quickly look at where they're at the depth chart. Tom Brady, unretired, came back. He's back as their number one. Blaine Gabbert, Kyle Trask, and Ryan Griffin. In the backfield, you have Leonard Fournette, the rookie Rachaad White, Keyshawn Vaughn, and Giovanni Bernard. Ronald Jones moved to Kansas City in free agency. With the receiving core, you have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage, Tyler Johnson, Rashad Perriman, Surreal Grayson, Scotty Miller, and Jalen Darden. The notable name there that's gone for good is one Antonio Brown. We know he left in the middle of last season. And at tight end, the big void is Rob Gronkowski, retired for good. He actually decided to retire, took his time. But Cameron Brate is now your number one tight end. O.J. Howard signed with the Bills as a backup in free agency. The rookie Cade Otton is the next guy on the list. And then another rookie, Ko Kieft, is the third stringer. So that's setting the table for the Buccaneers. As we've done with these teams, as we've broken them down to the key questions, is asking one related to each aspect of the team offensively. So we'll ask the question, how high should you draft Tom Brady in fantasy football with all these changes? Now, Brady to me is still a QB1, but still in more of the back half of the QB1s. The numbers have always been gaudy here in Tampa the first 2 years. You can keep those up, but I think this could be a year where they run the ball a little bit more, diversify the offense. They did lose a red zone threat there in Gronkowski, and Brown did his share of scoring as well when he was in Tampa. So different style of offense without those luxury items in AB and Gronk. So fewer guys to put in the end zone. Their receivers, Evans and Godwin, something to watch out there. Godwin coming off that major knee injury. So Mike Evans should see a lot of the targets there, not Captain America, even though he's from Boston, probably a Patriots fan, probably likes Brady. We're talking about Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, two separate guys here. Evans, that catch radius thing is going to make him a key target in the red zone, continue to be the biggest source of touchdowns for Tom Brady. Cameron Brate should see an expanded role in that capacity. Godwin coming off the ACL injury, that could slow him down. Gage was not a big scorer there in his time filling in a more expanded role with the Falcons with 4 touchdowns each the last 2 seasons. And you got the backfield is a little bit deeper now. Rachaad White, good receiver out of the backfield, but also pretty good finisher. Keyshawn Vaughn, flanking Fournette there, who is a big red zone force. So when it comes down to the TDs for Brady, I don't think they're going to necessarily go for 5,000 yards again. There are some diverse weapons in this passing game and go there, but I think they can be more controlled. Their defense is still pretty strong here, so play off that, even with some bodies lost. So Tom Brady's still QB1. I just would be wary. Like, it's a good thing to keep him out of the mix ahead of the elites in the AFC, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Justin Herbert, so they can do a little bit of running as well. Lamar Jackson also has a very strong case to go ahead of Brady here. Aaron Rodgers and Brady are probably in the same area here. Do I take Brady over Russell Wilson? Absolutely. I like Brady's upside a little bit there, but do I take him over Rodgers? I think that's a yes too, because Rodgers is adjusting to two new weapons there in Green Bay. So the weapons, at least, if Godwin is healthy, Brady will be locked in as a pretty solid QB1. So again, I think there's guys that you can invest in earlier and expect higher scoring from. But Brady's going to be solid, if not spectacular at times here, leading your team one more time. He wouldn't have come back if he didn't feel like he had it playing through his age 45 season and delivering at that high level. So when Brady makes that decision, I think you got to trust him that he's still got something left. I think if he couldn't play at that level, he would have hung it up and he would have been gone. It didn't affect him too much that Gronk retired. He wasn't hinging his decision based on that. He was looking at this situation saying, okay, we have one more chance to make a run with this team. While the salary cap situation is manageable here, I'd still expect this to be his last season here. But you look at Gabbert, Trask, Griffin being the end of the depth chart. They're not too concerned about what's going to happen next year or really about Brady's availability and durability here this year, despite his high age. So the Bucs are trusting in him. You have Byron Leftwich now having the reins completely here. Todd Bowles is the head coach, but there's no Bruce Arians day to day overseeing the offense a little bit. So I think Brady and Leftwich have put their own spin on Arians' deal, so that helps as well to keep things consistent here with Tampa. So, yeah, Brady's still QB1, pretty solid, pretty good no-brainer there. So Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson in that range in the first 12 picks, especially if Deshaun Watson is out of the mix. If he's not on the board here as a quarterback, you'd feel like both these guys are solid right smack in the middle QB ones. That'd be Rodgers and Brady. And then there's also a case that Brady should go over Wilson in that range as well. All right, we will get into the Buccaneers backfield in our second key question surrounding Tampa Bay for fantasy football in 2022. I do have to tell you that this episode is also brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why under often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning is your Odyssey an LX or an EX, that type of questioning, and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on the computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. Why do that when you have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket? Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store car dealership? With Rock Auto, they have the hardest things that you could find for your car. They will deliver it for you. I needed a side console cover there for one of my cars. They had it there for me. I needed a side mirror cover. They had it as well. I was dealing with an older Honda Accord and a recent Ford C-Max. They had what I needed there to take care of business for me. And they have everything you could need as well. Brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. We encourage you to discover your own car part needs. Discover how rockauto.com can help and check it out. Their easy-to-use website today is your solution to their auto part and your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car, truck. Right locked on in there. How did you hear about us box so they know that we sent you? Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. You can find them all at rockauto.com. All right, let us continue the show here, breaking down the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We asked the key question about Tom Brady. Does he still have it as a QB1 and what is expected to be his final season? All right, and now we go to this. Leonard Fournette here. Do we trust Leonard Fournette to continue to have the same role in the passing game? That's interesting because you look at who was out of this mix, Ronald Jones. He was the plotter. He was not a gifted receiver at all, so he's not there. But they acquire Rachaad White there out of Arizona State. He was a very capable receiver in college, put up a lot of numbers in that capacity. There's that. Fournette wasn't natural as a receiver when he came in the league, but he had that one big year at the Jaguars where he contributed there a lot as a receiver. And last year they just went into overdrive with a dump-off option for Tom Brady to complement his own power running. So Fournette one of his better fantasy seasons, his best since leaving Jacksonville. Was there in Tampa last year, the full year, and looking good doing that. But they might want to cut down on his receiving a little bit. Again, White is very capable of that. Vaughn has some explosive run potential we saw last year. And Giovanni Bernard hanging on here. And again, I think Rachaad White is more James White for what Brady would like than Gio Bernard. Bernard still could be moved on from, but there's a lot of receiving competition there with Fournette. That would really cut into his value here for sure in 2022. I don't think the targets are going to be the same. They're a little bit more diverse there with their passing targets at running back and also at the wide receiver and at tight end. They use Rob Gronkowski. So Fournette's biggest role might be trying to make up for Gronkowski in the red zone here. So I can see Fournette being a bigger force as a rusher all the way through the red zone, while his receiving role is not going to be nearly the same here in 2022. So what do you get? You still get a guy that's an RB2. I think you'll get a good amount of the volume. Bernard is pretty limited at this point, the former Bengal. Vaughn is more of the change of place home run threat. And so White is probably the biggest threat to his touches right now on the field. So swing back up. But if you're going to get Fournette, because White can catch the ball and also is a pretty strong runner with some good power there, he's got to be your number two in the handcuff there. So White is a major handcuff with upside here. Fournette, we know, still has that injury history. He got through a year banged up pretty well last year, but he's always a candidate to miss time here. So again, that's how I see it playing out. But Fournette should have a little bit less role in the pass game, but an expanded role in the red zone, the scoring situation here without Gronkowski in 2022. All right, so there's a look at Tom Brady and Leonard Fournette, the key questions there. We have another big general catch-all question about the receiving core here related to all these players. So we'll get into that in our final segment here on the show. And again, receivers we tend to spend the most time on because, again, that's what we're trying to figure out most with a lot of these teams. With quarterback and running back, there's a lot of settling there. But the Buccaneers, even though they might seem pretty cut and dry here with where they're going at wide receiver, there are some things that we need to sort out there. We'll get that done in our final segment. BetOnline.net is your number one source for our betting needs and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including what's the latest up with Major League Baseball, the big sport that is still in season here as NHL and NBA have come to a close with their champions. In NFL, we're waiting for that. We also have USFL action this weekend, so get in on that as your alternative football fix. BetOnline is your Canadian source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for whatever sports scores, podcasts, and news this season, whatever season it is. BetOnline.net is also the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including what's big in the summer. That would be mixed martial arts, boxing, and golf. And there's still a lot of big golf yet to come on a couple different tours here in 2022. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, it is time to close the show with our most in-depth question facing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. How will the receivers work to make up for A, the loss of Rob Gronkowski at tight end, and B, Chris Godwin may needing some time to recover from his knee injury? So good questions there. That might give some people pause with Brady, but there are some replacement options there that you do like. So Mike Evans is going to dominate targets here. There's no question about it. Cameron Brate should also see a natural bump in his red zone usage. We know he's been a big force in fantasy previously, so there's no Howard, there's no Gronk. Brady did develop good chemistry with him early in his time in Tampa before the Gronk reunion, so Brady is capable of stepping back up as a receiver. They've kept him around, maybe knowing that Gronk would be a short-term option here for a couple years, and Howard would have to move on. So Brady's a constant professional. He's got the New England connection there with Brady, the smarts as well, being a Harvard guy. So Brate is going to scheme himself open nicely in the red zone and get some help from Evans. So you have those two big bodies that are going to be the biggest forces there to replace Gronk in that capacity with a little bit of Fournette on the side as well. So I think you'll also see an expanded role for Russell Gage. He did work the slot quite a bit, and that's important because Godwin may need some time there, and Gage can slide inside there to fill in for Godwin if needed early. And you also have Tyler Johnson, who can be put on the outside, a guy that they've liked here for a while. They also brought back Rashad Perriman when Evans and Godwin were hamstrung at the end of the Jameis Winston era and couldn't play. Perriman really stepped up and delivered and produced. So he's a good extra guy to have. You have Surreal Grayson. We know he made a big play there for Tom Brady in that Jets game last year when Brown was out. And Scotty Miller probably looking on the outside here. He's had a good run with the Bucs, but they've added so much more now, including Gage, who probably hurts him most here with his role. And Jalen Darden, I've liked him, but again, Grayson might be favored more than Darden as one of those young dart throws that they have in this offense. So how are we looking at it? I think you'll see a lot of Gage being worked in. Remember, they have to also worry about the vacated targets from Antonio Brown from last year. So right now, Gage has a good chance to be right there in the 11 personnel. And I don't think you'll see a lot of two tight end sets, but you do have that option with Cade Otton, the rookie out of Washington. So you do have the 12 personnel that you could use, but I think it's going to be a pretty strict 11 personnel team with Evans, Godwin, and Gage trying to work there. And if Godwin's not ready, you'll see Gage inside and Johnson playing. Perriman also could be in the mix. So it is pretty deep in terms of receiving core, even though it's a little bit diverse and different, and you don't have AB in there, and you're waiting for Godwin on the mend, and no Gronk. I think you still see the sources of where the Bucs can still produce. And you look at what they've done in the offseason, I think they were prepared. They drafted two tight ends in Otton and Kieft. They invested quite a bit more than we expected for a number 3 receiver in Gage. And I think surprised some people taking a running back that high in White. So all of these aspects can help Brady in the passing game. Also, they can turn around and help Brady short to intermediate routes to replace what production will be lost with Rob Gronkowski gone. So you have Gage cutting it a little bit, Brate the red zone work. You got White as the outlet guy in key situations when Fournette's not on the field. So a lot of good stuff here to look at for the Buccaneers. But I would still say when you look at the drafting of this team, I think Mike Evans is locked in as an elite wide receiver 1. Brate sneaks into the tight end 1 conversation on the back end. Godwin, I'd be wary and draft him more as a wide receiver 2 at this point in the back end. Gage has some value, I think, as a wide receiver 3. Everything else we want to see how it plays out with Godwin's injury there. If Fournette is drafted by me, I would also, not long after, handcuff him with Rashad White versus Vaughn or Bernard there. And Tom Brady, just fine there as a number 1. So looking at this team, this offense, again, in transition, much like Sean Payton stepped down from the Saints and Pete Carmichael all the way with James Winston, their dress nature. That was the team we talked about before. Now you have Bowles taking over with Arians stepping away and leaving it with Leftwich and Brady. So, again, a lot of the same concepts are going to be there. It's just going to be to different guys this season. And, again, Brady would not return if he couldn't play at a high level. So what I'm expecting for the Bucs is a lot of points. I don't know if it's going to be the same high-scoring machine from the past. I think it really depends on how quickly Godwin can heal and how aggressive they want to make Brate in just replacing Gronk this season. But a lot of things are in place. And don't forget about that offensive line as well. When you have guys intact, I know you lost a couple bodies there. Ali Marpet retired. Alex Capo signed elsewhere. But you picked up Shaq Mason, good continuity, and good familiarity with Brady, being a blocker with the Patriots for a while. You have elite right tackle there, Tristan Wirfs, playing off Donovan Smith. So still the anchors of this team, including Ryan Jensen, who was brought back in free agency not long after. It was pretty clear that Brady was retiring or not retiring here in Tampa for 2022. So the Bucs, again, a lot of offensive upside, but we won't be wary. I think there's a source for sleepers, including White, Gage, and Brate that we're going to look at here beyond the principles there, Brady, Fournette, Evans, and Godwin with the changes on this team. So we know there's a clear path to Gage and Brate producing there with the vacated targets of Brown and Gronkowski. So really looking forward to it. So status quo pretty much says for Tom Brady, a little bit the cut and work of Fournette. Godwin may be a little bit slow, but a lot of things that we've seen before this offense, just with different characters in their Gage and Brate, is going to play out as we expect here. And it's good to have some, again, continuity. We know what Brady can do with Leftwich. We know what Leftwich and Brady can collaborate beyond Arians. So I'm really excited to see what this Bucs offense can do. So really, it's an interesting division of offenses for half the teams, New Orleans and Tampa. When we talk about Atlanta and Carolina, a lot of question marks there starting at quarterback, where Winston, I think, might be an answer for New Orleans, and Brady definitely is the answer for one more season in Tampa. There you have it. There's your key questions answered for the Buccaneers here ahead of training camp in 2022. That means we put a bow on the NFC South. That's 3 divisions down: NFC East, NFC North, NFC South. If you missed any of those 12 teams, the previous 11, check them out here on our archives there on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll turn the page and flip it to the NFC West next. So we'll look at the Arizona Cardinals, then we'll go down the line and look at the rest here. So we'll get Arizona, we'll look at Los Angeles Rams, we'll look at the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. So a lot of question marks there that we will try to best answer here before camp and set the table up for those teams going into 2022. Then we'll get into all the AFC. We'll go east to west there as well, starting with the Buffalo Bills and what their prospects are in a very high upside offense there for fantasy football. So, and thanks for sticking with us through the quiet part of the NFL offseason. We're giving the insight you need here in advanced scouting mode for your fantasy football leagues on Locked On Fantasy Football. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. Have a great day. I do have to tell you, thanks for making us our first listen today, Locked On Fantasy Football. Now, make your second listen, Locked On NFL, the podcast with our national NFL experts and insiders, keeping fans dialed in with the biggest stories and latest news from around the league, because an offseason doesn't equal a break in action. And don't we know that here on Locked On Fantasy Football? For Locked On Fantasy Football, Vinnie Iyer, have a great day, and we'll see you next time with a look at the key questions surrounding the 2022 Arizona Cardinals.